what you have to offer, and then like share something with, like in 3 or 2, and someone who has had like much more experience, or came in the space with more experience, but and took their time to form an idea, or had some time to form an idea, can go to one, which can be the target. Having enough confidence to actually go through um, with the journey process. At least that's what's on my mind, really.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. In a way that maybe we can depict it on the diagram might just look like, maybe Ryder has spoken to this too previously. You mentioned a visible place in the ecosystem. I don't see a reason why D-work stuff couldn't pop up in data things, amongst other ways. It's one of the best ways we know of centralizing in some way all the different goings on. And so maybe that goes into the blue, since you already have D-work mentioned in the silver hero. And then Haj, you mentioned an already fully formed journey is the goal. And so instead of the green advox DAO, approve, reject, and amend, maybe it's just a fully formed journey. Um, because we know that this is actually how we do think of journeys, right? Like folks that have become consistent in data things, or consistent in what might be D-work flows, right, in the future. I don't know. How does that feel to you guys?
I would say that maybe we've over edited the document. So I might say that it kind of makes sense to, like, the current one makes sense, but I'm just like offering like a different interpretation. The growth itself, I think, from 4 to 1 itself can be a journey. Um, so yeah, I think we can. I think this is enough to start working, or like to start a dialogue around, should we implement this, to have budget for this, next action items, something like that. Is that like helpful in building like this system, or should we work on more theory and practice and whatever? I think we've done enough research in that department. With the current literature that we have, this diagram, for example, and the one pager and the spec, all these matched with the MicroDAO implementation and the consensus flow. Maybe we can like work on tweaking the consensus flow a little, to match something like this, or even we start doing that manually at least. But I think we're ready to move this forward. And Harold, you should give up on the camera. It's not gonna work. Just 2 cents. Although I'd love to see your face, but it's not gonna work.
You have blue dots?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be a faceless meeting today.
I got some feedback about D-work. Just I wrote a little comment on it, or a message on it in the deprecated server. But I'll say it again here. So when we did that testing last week, and I ended up putting like a one stacks bounty on like a dework task to like just make a meme just because the test like random thing, and two people from dework asked to take it on or said they might be interested, and when they do that, it has them join the server. So there was, two people who joined the deprecated server. They came, I think they just came out of dework. And so from there, it'd be kind of like nice to have some sort of maybe server onboarding, or I don't know what that would look like. Because it'll just take anyone who's on dework to start, doing these things that are on the kind of bounty or the wish list board. So yeah, thinking about that, was that I didn't kind of realize that would happen. And is that the goal? And is that how we're thinking of this? Is just having kind of anyone come out and start doing any of the tasks? And yeah, also other things about that, like I guess you just like plug the microdAO into like power those grant items, which would be cool. And that's part of the system design, question mark. Anyway, that was, yeah, sharing that feedback and seeing if there's thoughts on that. I don't know. Thanks.
I'd like to say something. This is Ryder. Hell yes, Merrick. I'm just really grateful that you did that test and we're practicing, and I like to see what the possibilities are already, like how quickly we can attract folks that maybe we wouldn't otherwise attract, and like just and I totally agree, we're gonna need to like kind of find out. I agree with all your questions. I don't have answers to them. I just wanted to take a pause to just really sink into that moment of like that testing happening. And I'm also wondering, when you say that you commented, I'm wondering if you meant you commented in the GitHub for the governance working group or somewhere else. But yeah, I just wanted to have a congratulatory moment, and welcome Aloysius.
Hello, y'all.
Hey, Merrick, you wanna say something? I don't wanna cut you off.
I was just gonna answer Ryder. I could queue questions though if you want to say your thing right away.
No, go ahead. Go.
Yeah. So I just messaged in the actual Discord itself. So in the what's it called, Stacks adbox, and then deprecated, because that's where they came into, and so I just kind of put it in the, I think I put it in general, not on the GitHub, sorry. But yeah, and yeah, letting it sink in. Thanks.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. So for that, I noticed that, and I kicked some people. The dework thing is gonna, first I think we're gonna start like with just advocates, like a closed umbrella. The basic idea is to transfer that kind of like bounty mindset in Stacks community, like more advocates, for example. People who we have like through the Stacks community switch to the intrinsic path, basically. So I'm kind of trying to like close the or make it like a gated like community at first, so that we don't get overwhelmed, especially feeling out like some freelancers that go into work. I'm saying that they would be a bad that this would be a bad idea. I don't think we have to scale it yet, especially with us doing the advocates scaling up soon or in parallel with this work. So yeah, I'm not in favor of opening up uh, the D-Work board. I would. I think this might be a bug that I can fix it by closing the D-Work, the final D-Work, I guess, a board to like the stack server. I think then we might have a better idea or a better grouping. I can also I gotta check also with the roles so that it's restricted to 10 advocates, for example, and advocates. Yeah, that's my feedback basically.
Okay, cool. See, that's kind of what I thought, and so when I posted that test task and got that, that was kind of like unexpected behavior because I thought it was going to be gated like that. And I was trying to figure out like, are these people ad bots? And I just like don't know, but I think it was just like the default right now is it goes to public. So sounds like that's on on the immediate roadmap per se, or not immediate, but like at some point. Dope. Okay, cool. I was thinking about doing it like, do we do it NFT gated? That would be fun, but like I don't know. It's probably more of a D-Work setting than an NFT gate. I have no idea, but okay, dope. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the NFT can be cosmetic, but I guess it would be until we have something like console and it being integrated with G-Work, then we might have actual native NFT gaming, but I guess that's way too far in the future. But yeah, I think it can be cosmetic at first with the NFT. But yeah. Any other feedback or questions?
I think it makes sense to keep things, gated as you guys are talking about at first. But even once we do feel like we got, have things a little bit more handled, it is an interesting, onboarding flow, right? That public-facing D-Work stuff. But it also what happens too with the chance for some building together in a gated way is the culture building that I spoke to around. Even with this D-Work and with any type of task board, it almost by default brings the extrinsic motivations to the foreground. And for us, especially for any paths towards journeys, as we were just speaking to in the diagram, this is where there hopefully could be a whole lot of transformative potential built in to built into the design of the D-Work task board, right? Just in the culture of the community, maybe folks that are getting tasks done with newer folks to the culture, where there's not a pattern emerging of just tasks getting done for just purely extrinsic reasons, rather a path of folks getting into the rhythms that we saw with Did a Things, right? Which in a way is the open-ended version of a task board, right? Or it's like, okay, whatever task you're doing already or whatever task you come to mind, Did a Thing is a place for you to show us what's going on, and you can get compensated for it. But as soon as we start directing, even if it's needed direction for translation, or it's a direction that folks can appreciate because they're just looking for a place to contribute, to encourage a culture of folks, I don't know, finding their own path, intrinsic paths within what started as extrinsic paths, right? It would be a good thing to kind of have a container for before it's all the way open, so that those patterns get nipped in the bud. But as growth happens as well. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we can achieve a similar thing as Did Things, or if the use of Did Things helps encourage this. Just in the responses from the community, But yeah, it's interesting stuff to happen, I guess. Or Haas, did you know that was a thing before Merrick did that test?
I had a faint idea, but I didn't have an idea like when we were doing the test.
Beautiful, beautiful. No, I guess we needed it then. Thank you kindly, Merrick. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how some of this emerges, right? I think it'll be fairly, it might be easier said than done, right? To ensure a certain culture emerges. I think a big part of that is horizontality. And, Merrick, I don't know if you've been thinking again recently on any of your upskilling, program thoughts or structural thoughts on that, because there may be some important overlap there, right? Because say you get into translation partly because the extrinsic motivation, but also partly because you can dig that type of contribution, right? For somebody to have a network connecting mechanism available, right, in the advocates, and that being the upskilling thing, right? Because just merely connecting people a lot of times lends itself to upskilling, or can lend itself to upskilling. So I don't know. But yeah, maybe this is an important thing to consider when trying to seriously think about system design in the task board or the D-work flows. But yeah, that's my 2 cents, I guess.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I'm just, I'm kind of freestyling here a little bit with what I'm saying, but you're kind of naming this thing that already happens naturally, right? This natural kind of upskilling once you've networked with someone, and there's that natural upskilling that comes out of that. So in our system design, how do we want to apply our technology to this? Which is kind of a broad question, but I want to just ask you that and see what you got. Thanks.
So specifically, like the tooling, like policy kit tooling, or the bots, or what, the clan design with which technology?
I was really broad with my question.
No.
It's like, okay, so yeah, this is a thing that already happens. I guess we want to kind of track that upskilling as it happens and just bring it to life to kind of storytell. Specifically, I think with the upskilling, building off that translation example, I was thinking about too, just, one of the things that, this is like a continued thought from, I think I don't remember specifically, but there was a translation example in that white paper draft about the I guess sort of value translation. This is not the words you use. You use better words, and I'm trying to remember, and I'm very much paraphrasing, but the value creation that happens in that translation when somebody's learning a new thing. And I noticed too, just kind of observing, real-time translation a lot more than in recent years, and particularly the 201 working group, just watching that live translation happening, noticing how new language gets created during that process, specifically kind of because of that networking. And so there's value kind of being created there, and I guess giving visibility to that, is that kind of what we're trying to do in a similar way of maybe just bringing visibility, making visible that invisible exchange of that upskilling, right? That's the wording. So we're kind of doing that with this technology in this upskilling I guess process, but it's like it's a thing that already happens, and we're like bringing light to it. Is that kind of what we're doing in terms specifically with the technology of? I guess I don't know. I guess what I'm building, because I'm trying to build a thing that helps encourage that to happen, like incentivize that upskilling behavior, is how I've been thinking of it. Like we want to incentivize upskilling and stronger networking within like the Stacks community. And is that what I'm trying to build? I'm not even sure anymore. I had the initial idea a while back, but I haven't done much work on it recently. So I'm like, what do we really want to build for with this upskilling bot? And build for as in are we bringing to light the exchanges that are already happening, or are we trying to incentivize new ones with it? I guess is what I was trying to get to. Maybe. I don't know. I went for a ride there. So take it all with a grain of salt. Thanks.
No, thank you, man. No, it's the sense making, right? I think this is the whole gist of this. And it's good that you started general, right? So it gives us all a chance to kind of run through the different paths, right? And I think it's twofold, right? There's the making visible, but there's also the tangible mechanisms, right? The functional mechanisms, right? And I think it may be, like what we've done with other tooling, or the other technology in general, is they tend to overlap. We tend to use them together. We tend to keep the clan design in mind as a technology in and of itself, and maybe that's where things can come into the fray. Right? We're going to need issues, right? We haven't gotten into an issues flow per se, yet, but we can see with the proposals that we've started to come together on to keep in the queue, so to speak, for active issues with the right? The clan design technology, and also the policy kit stuff, right? We can see that this is an important thing, right? To never kind of there can really be no complacency, right? Particularly if things like whatever comes up upskilling approaches, that's something that you can see is something that's always moving, right? As long as there's even if the system's not necessarily growing numbers-wise, there's still a lot of upskilling to be had, right? And a lot of connecting to do, and this in the form of well-thought-out proposals that then ends up on a consensus floor for decision-making could be a beautiful way of making the upskilling tangible, right? Embedding it into the technology in different ways. But you made me think of something as well, right? I almost can't put my tongue on it now, but or put my finger on it. It was on the tip of my tongue, I should say. But yeah, I mean, you said naming things that are already happening, right? And maybe that's what made me think of something, but maybe it'll come back to me. But I'll leave the floor open for other folks. But those are some of the things that came to mind in terms of leveraging the clan flow and all of this, and maybe it would clarify some things for you, Merrick, in terms of the audience and whatnot that we can kind of tailor the upskilling to, and the word translation that you were mentioning is high value, right? Oh, I know what it came to mind. Data commons, right? In the white paper, that's actually what the high value data, the example, one of the examples given, right, is language translation, and there's folks working on Gaia Hub stuff right now, right? I've been meaning to talk to Haas about this as well, and maybe we have a little back and forth amongst ourselves today about it, because it is maybe an important part of, in addition to just building it into technology flows we already have, how do we structurally build it into advocates design, and maybe that's by doing the due diligence of data schemas, right? Working alongside folks that are doing Gaia work and ensuring that there are data schemas conducive to the high value data that is language translation, and all of that data is managed by our community, right? With tooling, right, that is conducive to this, and I don't know, maybe how you can bring some more technical light to some of this, but I've been thinking about that for some time. I remember having some discussion with Dan around it, and maybe it lends itself to the upskilling as well, right? When it comes to not just translation, but anybody in any of these particular backgrounds, skills, disciplines that pop up, to have wherever it's applicable, data commons is potentially a way of connecting folks, right? Folks that are maybe data science heavy, right? All of a sudden connected with folks who just had the skill of translation, right, in one language or another, and they all of a sudden they're working in tandem with a data scientist for important reasons, right? In terms of building out the infrastructure for client-side or community, local, regional data control and management, right? Which is extremely important for Web3 spaces, right? To not just have the same old Web2 infrastructure for extraction of data, but rather have a Web3 infrastructure conducive to distributed power in data, right? So a data commons, right, for respective things that come up, as and how that relates to upskilling may be a tangible place for us to start building it in structurally, right? But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. That illustrates those words a lot of what I was thinking about. I'm gonna need to digest on that for a while. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm glad I remembered the data commons. I've been wanting to have that conversation for a while. I know it's something that was actually included in a lot of the introductions to advocates and the way we're thinking about the systems design. But we're talking about so many other things. I don't know. Haas or anybody else, does that spark anything, or you having more technical insights? Maybe have you been following the folks working on Gaia Hub stuff recently, or maybe there's some inroads to collaboration there? I don't know if any of this makes sense. Even let us know, Haas.
Nope. And as you can see, embarrassingly enough, I think shit. I gotta stop sharing my screen. Nope. I have no idea.
I didn't see. I wasn't watching your screen. Okay, no problem. No problem. But yeah, maybe we touch on it again, because it's something I think may be important, right, for like some tangible commons, right? Building throughout advocates, throughout the Stacks ecosystem, even. To focus seriously on data schemas and things like this. I'm not a data scientist in any stretch, but I just remember asking Dan a string of questions like, does this make sense? Does this make sense? And he just led me towards something that was at the time called block stack collections, which was, folks at the time were going to be focused on building out, I guess, there's some standardized schemas for the regular conventional, storage structure or architecture that's in place, and for software, internet in general, and I guess collections was going to be a Gaia Hub version of this, or Stacks technology, version of this, ensuring. The way I was thinking about it was how that lends itself to something that was being called MIDs, right, or mediators of individual data, just people coming together to manage their own data. And I think in the context that I originally heard about it was from Jaron Lanier at a Radical Exchange conference, and these concepts of high value data as well. But I think it was in the context of selling that data, right? And high value data is I think also a reference to selling that data. But there are I think benefits of community managed and controlled data distinct from just merely selling it as well, right? And it has a lot to do with just sheer distributed power. And it may be worth something. It may be something worth focusing on, right? And advocates. Maybe it's a way of. Maybe it lends itself to the upskilling stuff as well, as I mentioned. But yeah, maybe we'll touch on it another time if there's not much to touch on it today. But yeah, thank you, Merrick, for get us thinking about upskilling again, I guess, in that way. But yeah, I don't know how we got from journeys to this right off the bat, but I think we're, like you said, Alice, rounding off on over editing the diagram from here. Thank you kindly here for the modifications you did make. I think they were worth it, right? Necessarily over editing. But if we did any more today, it possibly could have went over, crossed that edge. But yeah, I guess now it's about moving forward with action items, as you were saying, Haas. But I think getting it through the active issues is probably one of the first steps as well. Getting other voices here around journeys. But yeah, I'll leave the floor open. See what's on you guys' minds.
Oh, I do have a point. I've been messaging in Wolf Clan about asking someone to bring up the issue because I've already experimented with that before. So I like someone else to try and take that on, like to raise issues with things that we already have already. I think a few things already, right? And I found one, the Polish guy, he can take one issue on, so he's happy to propose one of the issues. So I've suggested to him that perhaps he can speak to you about raising that issue. I don't know if it's to do with Journey, but I don't know.
Well, I think it is just to get to the next steps of journeys for sure. But yeah, I think it, it's particularly on the men's side of things, there's nothing wrong with other folks picking up that responsibility. I know you tried the first time, Hero, so I appreciate you even facilitating it again this time. And so yeah, we're going to need it on both sides, right? The female clan side and the male clan side.
Yeah. Maybe we need to ask the female wolves, like, do they want to bring up any? I think there are 3 on the table to be brought up as a proposal or something. I know the code of conduct stuff, the oral recitation is one, and this one we just done today, journey. What else?
And the original conflict resolution stuff that from yourself and Juliet.
Oh,
that's the third one I think that
Okay,
that we can
so
try
that
for.
one I think needs to be redrawn a little bit based on the feedback we have, because I think some people had some feedback more about the ending. So I'll just tweak the ending and then that will be ready.
Okay. All right. All right. Yeah. I think those are some of the next steps. I think the yeah. Go ahead.
I think Juliet quite is being on that oral code of conduct quite a lot. So maybe the wolf we can suggest the wolf male can bring up the implementation of journey, the pathway to journey diagram. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I think well, yeah. I think this was a point of clarity that we were kind of shaky on at first, and some of the flows from the longhouse, and maybe we can depict them better in some of the consensus flow diagrams that we
Okay.
have. But I think that the way we might want to try it is to have an issue go all the way through the female side, the female clans,
Oh.
and then have that issue be picked up by the men clans, right? And
Oh.
then have
Okay.
them
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
have them all come together, and then in this way we have the autonomous flows happening. Also, now we have Ryder here. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Um, we had some good dialogue on, and I guess some of the first dialogue on some of the symbolism around the oral protocols, um, and I think we could use some changes to them as well. But it shouldn't the minor changes that we had in mind in the conversation shouldn't block the readiness of that particular issue, and so. But it's also something that might require, um, presence in that dialogue around, what the symbolism, how the symbolism came about, or some of the things in mind about the symbolism. Some of the folks here had that dialogue, and could be available in asynchronous threads that the women invite into for the needed information, or invited into real-time dialogue with the women as well, and then leave before any decision-making processes go on. But for things like this, and I'd imagine other things, right? It makes sense, especially if the dialogue wasn't had before it's inactive issues, to the point where the female wolves or female representatives in general can't get across important concepts in that came about in the dialogue around the symbolism, for example. And so that's one of the things that we discussed when we realized we didn't have yourself or Juliet with us. I don't know if we even had a recording for that one, but maybe the recording could be used too in those autonomous processes. I'm not sure, but it's good to have you with us here now, Ryder, so that we can mention that all of those different options for us, so that it shouldn't feel like a blocker. But yeah, I think we can. I think the Juliet had originally planned for it to happen last week. Maybe the kickstarting of some of these issues, but I think some family stuff came up, so it got pushed back. So maybe it gets started back up this week. I'm not sure for the female side of things, but yeah. Hopefully so, because we have quite a few issues now, and it would be some good substance to test out the tooling as well. As I said, can probably make some changes to it. Hey, Ryder.
Hey, couple of things that are coming up for me. One is I want to ask the question, what if the women don't meet? And then what happens? And my second question is, kind of hard to hold both because they're so different. Maybe I'll just start with, yeah, what if Women's Council doesn't meet?
That's a good question. Because if you guys don't meet, in
This is like
theory,
your-
we're held back, right? As in, like,
Yeah.
not held back, but like, do men just wait until?
Can I want to add something before you say much more. Just, I want to also add, because they are meeting next week. I can't make that call, but I want to clarify, what if the women don't meet, or they meet, but they don't talk about the issues that are being proposed? So just wanted to get that out there. Please, discuss freely.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the issues proposed. It's really a Wolf Clan thing, right? Like it's. I think it would normally be on Wolf Clan representatives to be, ensuring that the issues that are being lodged are formulated into some type of proposal. And so the issues that are being discussed that aren't, like say, for example, the 3 issues that we've been trying to formulate, right, in place of those Wolf Clan responsibilities, just as a collective of folks with temporary clan roles. Whatever issues are being discussed, it would be, the collective responsibility to ensure that those are formulated into comprehensive proposals as well, right? So that by the time if there are issues that do apply to the more general clans, because it's possible that you might have an issue that comes up such as, female wolf clan. There's an issue that may come up that's just female turtle clan, right? And maybe there's an issue that just comes just relevant to all female clans, but it's not relevant to all of the advocates, right? It's possible, but if that's not the case, for it to be able to go through the flow, it would also, these issues should be, formulated in a way so it can be lodged in both wells, right? And in all wells, right? As all clans will have a similar well function to ensure things are being facilitated throughout. And so it's kind of like the fractal architecture of it all. And we figure that proposal, form is important. And also, the would-be wolf representatives' responsibilities of ensuring that this is something that should be made an issue, right? Something that aligns with the core values, something that is relevant, right, in that context. And so that's something that all is considered, right, as it's being formulated into a proposal that the rest of us can sink our teeth into if it applies. But even if it doesn't apply to the rest of the clans and it just applies to female turtle clan, it should still have this wolf clan touch, this wolf clan representative touch, I should say, of being, put into a comprehensive proposal for the rest of the female turtles to sink their teeth into, or the rest of the female clans to sink their teeth into. So I hope that clarifies at least part of that. Yeah.
I think that I feel like clarifying that, well, you put so eloquently and beautifully how this could go, or how the protocols like kind of lead the dialogue and the active issues and the issues being brought forth by the community. But looking on the ground, what I notice is that we don't have wolf reps. I actually don't know how wolf reps are determined. I don't understand how they would come about. Our meetings are kind of small. Typically, like weekly, we have these meetings and they're mixed. There might be a woman present, there might not be. It's typically male dominated. And then there's, more males than females. And and we don't, to my knowledge, have reps. And then furthermore, like this upcoming meeting that of the Women's Council is going to happen, because people are excited to make it happen, even though some of us can't make it. And there won't be any wolves. As far as I can see, the only active participants that will make it are either not on the server or Bear Clan. I don't know if there's any women that are turtle, but if there are, just they haven't been like vocal lately. I don't know if they're checking the chat. So they're like, for example, on the ground, there will be a meeting on Wednesday, and there will be bears present, female bears, and there won't be any representatives, and there won't be any wolves. And some of those bears, just to be fair, might end up being wolves because like a lot of people come in and default to bears. But just I want to say like I'm seeing like with all due respect that there's like a difference between what's on the ground and like how we want things to go or how I hear things could be done. So I just want to like lay out a little bit more of like the reality that I see unfolding right now. Maybe to mitigate expectations as well.
Yeah. I mean, imagine there might be similar things that happen on the male clan side of things, right? It's just it's a coordination effort thing, right? Coordination that, like you mentioned, right? We've said, I think, a few times in previous sessions, as we've tried to, as we've temporarily, onboarded folks into the clan design, which is, it'd be nice to get in the flow, right, of these active issues, broaden the real-time sessions, as you mentioned as well, to get that continuity of mind. Hopefully the oral protocols and things like this help us do this as well through the active issues. But it's then, right, once we get a feel for each other, when we can make temporary representative, selections, right, not elections, but selections, through the consensus process, right, that we all hopefully get familiar with. And so that's how, representatives will come about. And I think that's what makes a lot of this coordination on the ground, as you mentioned, for the time being, a lot more disorganized, right, in terms of, who's taking on the responsibility of coordinating what. But, just like what happened the first time we tried to engage with the clan design and the tooling for the first time, there's folks that just opted into that responsibility, knowing that we didn't have representatives that would normally be doing that. I mean, particularly Wolf Clan representatives, as you mentioned. And so I mentioned this to Hero as well in terms of on the male clan side of things. Like a lot of the coordination efforts too will include, bringing folks into Bear Clan, as you mentioned, right, by default, as a default clan, just to ensure folks have a flow to engage with. But also, checking for, folks that maybe are familiar with the clan design more than others, and if they have identified, if they, their interests and motivations do identify with any of these given clans, this can be, this can be done as well as a part of the coordination. Not unlike what we had to do a little while ago in Advocates. And so I think all of that, comes into the responsibilities of just the collective of both sides, both clan flows, right? Whether it's the life giver side or the life protector side. And so, I think you're talking about a general clan meeting, if in terms of what you described, if I may be mistaken. And this is fine in terms of getting folks together, like you said, maybe don't even have a clan, right? That may be a time where folks, start to coordinate and things like this for the more autonomous flows and the flows that are trying to leverage the clan design. I think I'm sure there'll be a lot of feedback too in those coordination efforts that make their way into the consensus flows. And so hopefully this is just a way of getting to know each other that much better. And folks that don't know the system design, to get familiar with it, add to it, contribute to some of the mechanisms and the structures, not unlike, the way, Merrick and myself are going back and forth, just sense making, right? So I think that'll come up in the coordination and in that potential more general life giving session that you mentioned, right? It's fine if it's not completely coordinated right off the bat. Especially if you guys are coming together real time. It's probably the best opportunity folks have to coordinate beyond that. But yeah, of course, it's always open to the feedback on the structures, right? And coordinating this could be a good way of just engendering that feedback or just exposing folks to it. So I know you said you won't be there, Riley, but yeah, maybe we get this message to the folks that will be somehow, some way.
I have a thing that's bubbling for me. In the question, like what happens when they meet if they don't discuss the thing or whatever? Like what I'm imagining is, what if there are people who could be like, hey, there's an issue, and they raise an issue and then create a silent for it. Like then it could, like how do we mitigate avoidance within it? I guess is sort of that's what's coming up for me. Is anybody could like raise an issue and say it's a thing and then pull people in, and then when people come in, if they like don't talk about it or I don't know, it's just like that's something that's like stewing for me that I'm thinking about. I don't have more than that. I'm just imagining that like avoidance can happen in that space.
Yeah. Well, I think that is the function of the Wolf Clan representative, right? And like all the responsibilities wrapped up in representing voices, right? Genuinely, authentically representing voices, right? I think representative politics structures, usually we're familiar with the antithesis of this, right? So, but in bottom-up system design and the native context that we're inspired by, if something is lodged in the well, and who is supposed to be the best of us, right? In terms of these traits of a representative, someone of the good mind, that we feel is going to accurately empower all of our voices, right? There's definitely room for someone to say, hey, look, why wasn't this picked up as an issue, right? Turned into a proposal, right? Or why, this thing that was turned into a proposal, why wasn't this thing brought up? This would be, a misuse of power if we did have representatives, right? And it's even a misuse of power by any given collective if we don't have representatives. And so the idea would be to go to your respective rep, right? If there was an attempt to lodge an issue and it wasn't there, right? So without that, right, it's just the collective, it's just us, But I don't think it should take so long. And just like we're in temporary clan roles, we'd be in temporary representative roles as well, right? To ensure that, like, it's hard for any of us to say we're completely of the good mind as we're learning these protocols. And so it's, I think this is one way to think of it. But to answer your question, Elo, there shouldn't be any room for true avoidance. Now, say we did have representatives, right, and we had dependable representatives that we all trusted very well. We know that that we know their mind, so to speak, and there was an issue. You know, somebody is claiming that they attempted to lodge, but it was never picked up. And then we all look at it and we see that, well, this is not something really relevant, or this isn't really something, that, that there's also that possibility as well, right? But the idea would be to not have any room for the misrepresentation of voices, right? Which that would be, right, if there was like an intentional avoidance of an issue, so to speak. But yeah, I think a lot of this comes into the context of having those representatives in place, which can be us, in not so much time, especially if we get some of these active issues going. But it brings up another part of Ryder's question that we may have missed, which is, what happens when, any given Life Giver meeting doesn't happen, and I think it does stop things, right? But particularly it stops things within the female flows before it even gets to any of the male flows. In fact, we may want to do the due diligence of ensuring that the female side of the flows want to engage with the male side of the flows, right? Maybe there's a time period where we're proving ourselves, so to speak, right, as trustworthy to engage in consensus with, having the temperament to engage in consensus with the life givers. And this is something that we see in the native context, and maybe something that we may want to